hello everyone. As we speak, it's London Edtech Week in the UK. So to celebrate, we're putting out an episode of the Edtech Podcast every day this week. You'll be hearing from a mixture of amazing teachers and educators, Ministries of Education, EdTech companies, sleep specialists, and much, much more, recorded all over the world. If you enjoy listening, give us a shout out on Twitter at Podcast Edtech and share the London Edtech Week hashtag Edtech Week LDN. Normal service resumes next week. Enjoy! So I'm here with Anjali Tiwari from AUGLI, or Augmented Learning as the non-abbreviation, from India. So welcome, Anjali.
Thank you so much, Sophie, for having me here.
So you were taking part in the Next Billion EdTech Prize?
Yes, I was.
So tell me more. So what does your work entail? What kind of problem are you solving in the world of education?
Sure. So AUGLI is an AI-enabled platform that brings together knowledge and skills every day. What we realized in the education system that we were doing a great job on curriculum and great job in ensuring that marks were a measure of success, but in the real that doesn't really stay true. What really matters in the real life is the future skills of being able to assimilate the amount of information that you're getting hit by and being able to communicate your perspective. So that's why we created AUGLI, so that children are aware of their world. They have a point of view and they express themselves better. And when they do that, they immediately get feedback on their fluency, on their thinking, on their language control. We saw those as essential skills that will make sure that they're successful.
Can you describe, like, if I'm a student and I want to put all those skills to the test, when I go onto AUGLI, what would be an example scenario of, I'm guessing, that would be augmented in that way? And
so why don't I tell you the user journey of a student who comes in. Now, when you log into AUGLI, what it does is that it clearly assesses your level of comprehension. So I could be an 11-year-old with good reading, great reading habits, and hence the comprehension of that of a 15-year-old. Or I could be a 14-year-old who's got the level of a 9-year-old. So AUGLI will first assess you for your level of comprehension and then assign your levels. Post that, it allows you to personalize the content that you want to read. So between the genres of nation building to environment to science to just regular stuff that makes kids curious, you could select your genres and get interesting exercises. So I click onto an article. What it does is, after reading the article, it tells me to summarize the key points that I've understood. Now when the child summarizes the key points he's understood, then the platform gives him feedback on saying, yes, you got 3 of them right, but you could have picked up these 2 other 2 as well. And by the way, as you summarize back to me, these were some words that you could have used more effectively, or your speaking pace could have been slower, faster. So it's comprehensively giving him the feedback basis his personalized activities that he's curious to read about every day.
very interesting. And then, so are you seeing this mostly utilized in a kind of flipped learning approach? So it's outside of the classroom, at home, or is it in the classroom?
Yeah, so right now we're experimenting outside the classroom, but so it's really helping to change the conversations that parents have with children, because it also comes with a parent pack which is allowing the child to design the rewards that he merits. So I could be a child and I could have that conversation with my parent to say, if I were to accumulate 5,000 points, can I have my Nike shoes? So they're setting mutual goals to go through this journey. Having said that, we do see this extremely relevant for the school scenario as well. What we did see as a problem statement in the schools also was teaching children on static content, and everyday current affairs change, and they are great conversation starters for classrooms as well. So how do you sort of augment the classroom experience for the teacher to use AUGLI as a platform to pick up the recent most stuff to discuss?
And when did you launch? And, what's next? What's your big focus?
Yeah, so we've launched this year only, and we are in a couple of schools in Delhi right now. What we will do is we will go across to and expand our impact in the B2C retail segment as a subscription model, and we'll go across covering more schools in India before we head out and take the journey towards Southeast Asia and Middle East.
Very interesting. So direct to parents.
Yes, direct to parents. Because I think if the consumer is the learner in the center, let's keep the focus on him, then everything else is really an enabler.
What's your experience been like here? Who have you met that you've had interesting conversations with?
Here in GESF, my top of mind is really Stephen Pinker.
Okay, I'm so annoyed I missed it.
Yeah.
Tell me what he said.
It's totally made my day, and he was very, very excited about the stuff that we're doing, and we pretty
so
much
you had a one-to-one with him. Oh, great.
correct. And I was actually very clued on and very keen that he joins the journey, except the fact that he's got a lot of things going for him. So he's pointed us out to some articles that is something that we will incorporate back in Ogly. So that he was very excited to share. And the second one has been Paul Kim, who's with the Stanford University and driving the agenda on critical thinking. So we've had some exciting conversations that you will see play out on the platform.
That's great. With Stephen Pinker as well, did you see him present?
Yes.
And so what was the main sort of essence of the presentation? If you could...
Main essence of the presentation was around the fact that overall prosperity is going up, happiness is going up. So however much we might point out to individual experiences, the fact is that there's enough in data saying that it's getting better for the world overall, and it's great to be optimistic about it.
Yeah. So there's a lot of amplification of certain news items, but they're not necessarily a reflection of the true experience in the long tail of things.
Absolutely. So that was a good positive message that he left us with.
Yeah. Well, it's good to be positive sometimes. What was your experience like being in the Next Billion EdTech Prize? Like, have you entered, you came through all these different pitches?
Well, it was an honor, firstly, to be nominated so early in our journey for the first billion. But I think we see that uniqueness of the idea that we bring onto the table. So I do see people getting more serious about future skills, and that's a wave that's definitely going to accelerate. And it was exciting to see the passion that my fellow co-founders and other startups had and the problems that we were solving. So that whole appreciation of saying, my God, there are so many ways of solving for the next billion and so many aspects to solve in different continents. I'm actually humbled by that experience. So, you sometimes feel that you're the rock star, then you're like, wow, there's so much good stuff happening over here. So
yeah, it's inspiring seeing people present in their different ways. You always can take something from it.
Yes, absolutely. And more and back to the Stephen Pinker conversation that you were talking about, determination. That whole determination and the grit that you see amongst all the founders, and you're like, okay, some people also feel
taking the feedback and
yes.
be like, okay, I can take that on board.
Yes, I can just debrief and come back with a fresh day tomorrow morning.
That's brilliant. If people want to find out more about what you're doing, what's the best way for them to go about doing that?
So we have website links up and ready. So you could go and type out https augli.ai. So the Ogly site is up and running. I'm Anjali Tiwari, easily accessible on LinkedIn as well.
Are you a Twitter person?
Yes, we are on Twitter with Think with Ogly.
Okay, Think with Ogly. Okay, wonderful. Well, Anjali, thank you so much.
Sophie, it has been my pleasure.
Okay, brilliant. So I'm here with Yasmin Amin and Adnan Mahmood. So thank you very much, both of you, for taking the time out of your day today. Yasmin, could you tell our listeners a little bit about the work that you do, where you do it, and why you're here today at the Global Education Skills World Forum as well?
Hey, hi, everyone. My name is Yasmin Amin, and I'm from Malaysia. I'm the top 50 finalist for the Global Teacher Prize in 2015. And I was the first teacher to be nominated from Southeast Asia and Malaysia. And I'm here today because we're part of the Varki Teacher Ambassadors community. We are called the Legacies, okay, because we are here also as mentors to the current top 50 finalists of 2019. And I also have a session earlier this morning. It's for STEM for girls, having it like 50-50. Okay. So that's my session. Yeah, thank you.
I spent 7 months in Malaysia when I first left school.
Oh, so you came to Kuala Lumpur?
I was in Kuala Lumpur, but I spent 5 months in Sarawak in Sabah, so that part of the country.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, and then flew back through there. But yeah, loved it. It was brilliant.
Okay, it's beautiful.
Okay, and Adnan, how about yourself? Could you tell us your story a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Adnan. I was top 50 finalist in 2017. So that's why I'm here today. So I've been invited for the past 3 years. So I was representing the UK as a top 50 finalist, UK all the way from London, especially East London. And yeah, so my specialist area is enterprise and entrepreneurship. So my experience in the UK was about developing enterprise entrepreneurship and how we can link it to curriculum and looking at skill-based learning rather than just tests and rather than just exams and rote learning. It's about how can we prepare our students for the future and for the real world.
And which school was that with?
Barking Dagenham College in Essex.
And so now I notice on your badge you've got Ministry of Education, UAE.
Yeah,
so what happened in between?
Yeah, so then through this shortlist, I was recommended to apply. I went through the process and I applied to work for the Ministry of Education. So now I've migrated and now I work in the UAE.
And so what does your role entail here?
So I work for the Ministry of Education. I'm still within the classroom along with various leadership roles. So I manage the vocational aspect. So again, same kind of line, which is vocational, skill-based. How can we make teaching and learning more applied?
Okay, so we're definitely going to come back to that because I hope that we will be launching a new series on vocational and adult education. So we'll come back to you just in a moment. Yasmin, can you tell us a little bit more about your work? And obviously you were here, I think, talking about STEM. So what was it that you think picked you out from among many teachers to come and represent here that you could share with our listeners, many of whom will be teachers as well and want to know what kind of gems they can pick out and put into practice as well?
Okay, thank you, Sophie. Basically, I teach chemistry in school and science and also life stories to my students. My students are generally boys, 13 to 17 years old, and I've been teaching in the same school for the past 15 years, which is a total of 17 years of teaching as a teacher. And being here, this is my first time as a presenter, or basically I joined a forum. And all this while I've been here as a participant. And to be here is actually quite powerful because year after year we get to unlearn and relearn as an educator. You need to venture out and look for activities or sessions, to enrich yourself. So I would encourage teachers to actually have one forum or any education forum per year that you can join as a participant first, and then after that try to see if you can fit in and if you can offer something, because there's always something that you have as a teacher that you want to share to other people. So like today I was sharing about what I do for my students as boys and how do I empower them to empower girls. So if I don't do that, if I don't do the sharing session, no one else would know.
And what was that empowering work that you were talking about then? Can you describe exactly what it is?
Okay, I took my students to hiking sessions. We went to Sabah and we hiked Kinabalu.
I've been up that mountain.
Oh, you've been on the mountain.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
We won the Brian Lara Prize Award for that, and we used the money to hike Kinabalu. And although I didn't reach, I reached about 2,700 of
You start
height.
to get a bit like the altitude sickness.
I was hit by acute mountain sickness. So, but my boys did. And along the way, there was only me and another female teacher. So we didn't include any male teacher in it because we thought that we want to see how our boys are going to take care of us. And true enough, they took care of us like princess. They even said, teacher, you're like a princess because, we have to hold your hands and hike up, certain parts that's quite difficult. But it taught them how to deal with women in general. Like how do they see us as persons, so that they know how to react with the girls. Because how in a boys' school where they always thought that girls are a less superior gender, and it's my role to actually teach them that that's not the right way to do it.
So it's not just about chemistry, it's about respect, and then that feeds back into chemistry and going into the world of science and that kind of thing.
So it's chemistry. So we create chemistry between us.
Chemistry on a different level.
Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, and then Adnan, so vocational. So I'm really interested what you're seeing here in the UAE and what the kind of aspirations are for vocational and adult training. Because obviously it seems at home that there is more of an appetite for learning which is hands-on and, gets people what they need to kind of survive. And that doesn't always have to be a transactional thing about jobs, but just making it a bit more tangible.
No, I absolutely agree that, vocational education, what students do, they can't just go in to prepare them for an exam and do rote learning so that they can pass for the exam. How can we, as educators, prepare our students for the future? How can we prepare our students to cope in the real world? And it's all about developing those skill sets. So with that notion, in the UK, I believe it was in 2015-16, I was awarded Vocational Qualification Teacher of the Year nationally, which stemmed on to a few other awards. But, that's where my heart is.
And so what is it that you're doing? What is it that you're doing?
I develop many projects in the UK, develop many projects that link project-based learning to industry. So my specialism area is business.
Okay.
So I will get students to develop their business ideas, develop their business concepts and present that and pitch that to industries for funding. And I had numerous students starting up their businesses.
Well, this is what I was going to say. So did you then have students go on to be entrepreneurs of their own?
Yeah. I have students that have started up floristry businesses.
That's brilliant.
Sweet companies. The most innovative idea was midwifery students. They developed an idea of a tiptoe shoe, which was developing a shoe that could start off from a flat shoe so that they can go back and forward, and if they're in a hurry, but when they get to work, they can pop in the heel, and it turns into a professional working.
So the idea
heel.
that people, wear trainers quite often to work and then take them off, put their other shoes on. Oh, that's interesting.
So that was a very innovative, creative idea that they came up with, and it was, and that's what I believe in. If students have ideas, is how can we encourage that? So we developed that idea, got that into a different curriculum area that developed 3D printing. They actually 3D printed this concept, and that was presented to Barclays, and it was presented to various other CEOs.
And, well, I'm interviewing you after this, Cameron Mirza from the University of Bahrain, and he's their head of business transformation, and they've just put all of their learner records on blockchain with Learning Machine. And I know that he was talking about how they're trying to develop up this idea of, we think of like fintech, and London's got a really developed fintech sector, but getting some of that sector expertise and opportunity out to the Middle East as well. So are you sort of seeing in your role, I'm just wondering, at the moment, is it sort of still that traditional pathways thing of, okay, if I go to school and I'm successful, I go to university, I get a job, or is that starting to change as well? And is there more of a nuanced landscape of further education colleges or coding boot camps, all that stuff?
Yeah, so right now there's I work for the government schools, and there's a new stream that's being developed. Last year was the pilot year. We've developed it into the second year now. So from grade 9s, and now our grade 9s have progressed onto grade 10s, which is called professional stream. And this stream is solely based on for applied and specialized subjects, so that students can choose specialized subjects that they can that they want to focus on. So you've got subjects like engineering, and you've got multimedia, business management, events management. So these are the various subjects that they can choose as an elective to focus on from grades 10, 11 and 12.
Brilliant.
And this is something new. Before it was just one stream that just focused on generic subjects, but now there's a new stream that focuses more on vocational side.
Okay, thank you. Yasmin, what's next for you? So I think you said, what year was it? Was it 2015?
Yeah.
Yeah, so 2015, we're 2019, I have to remember. What would you love to see in the next 6 months? When you come back here and you make all these new connections, what do you go and do with them?
Because being a Varkey Teacher Ambassador has actually changed my life 360 degrees so many times. And although I didn't win the ultimate prize, but like what I've told my fellow VTA family, my goal at the time was to have my own STEM lab. And now after 5 years, I finally got to own one.
That's amazing.
It's not technically mine, it belongs to the school, but at least I have convinced people to invest in it.
Yeah.
And it's not only a modern chemistry lab, but you also have a small part where I converted it to forensic lab, because I'm dealing with forensics. Now, I was a former engineer before, and I also worked in the forensics department before I became a teacher. So I'm instilling this new ideas and also knowledge to my students. And after this, we're going to open the lab for the community to come and learn about forensics. So that's what I'm looking forward to. And I work with the local municipal, who is our main funder for the lab. And the local municipal has already agreed to have a program for the community. So it's a forensic program for the community. It's as simple as doing finger lifting technique, because it's you don't need policemen actually to do that. I mean, I can teach you how to do it. You just need the eyeshadow. Yeah, and you just need eyeshadow and also a blusher brush. That's it. And you tell your students that how a thief will actually leave their fingerprint, because they're agitated while they're doing any crimes, and they'll touch their hair which has oil in it. And then I relate that to chemistry, because oil is actually alcohol plus carboxylic acid, and you get ester, which is oil. So it goes, yeah. I'm giving you the science aspect of it. But we need to do that.
I'm just brushing up.
But we need to do that because we need to empower the society actually, because I want the parents to know how important STEM is. And with that, if the children can actually come to the lab on weekends, I don't mind spending my time on the weekends. Rather than I see them going to cyber cafes, playing games all the weekend and not doing anything. So it's good if we can have that. I mean, it's still a long way to go, but we're taking the small steps for that.
I've heard so many conversations here about, getting the parents into this conversation. And
that is the main thing, because right now, I think about in January, one of the teacher in my school, she messaged me and she said that, do you understand what my son was writing? Because the first day of school, normally the first graders, they were asked to fill up a form on their own to write what is their ambition. And this boy wrote YETEBER, So to other people, they thought it was YouTuber. But I knew what he wanted to say because he couldn't spell right. So he was actually writing a YouTuber. He wants to be a YouTuber at 7 years old. And the mother was shocked because she didn't know. She didn't know that, YouTuber is an occupation. Yeah, it's a thing. But she was like, why can't my son, have an idea that, I want to be a doctor or an engineer? I said, because that is not what he knows. He's been looking at things from a different point of view. So he sees social media as something very powerful. So that's why we need the parents to understand that, okay, occupations like doctors and engineers are there, but we also have, a long whole list of other occupations.
If he said he wanted to be a mainstream news anchor or journalist, they probably still would have said, why don't you be a doctor? But at least they get it. It's not that different.
And that's why we have also a program in my school. There's this a local news. It's called Astro Awani. Came to our school and then have a pilot project in January. So I have a group of students, 20 of them. So they are called the Young STEM journalists. So at the moment they are collecting videos, and when time I get back, so I have to filter and see what are the news that's useful for the to be uploaded into the website. So now they want the stories to come from the children, and in the beginning I questioned them. I said, oh, maybe you get lazy, but they said no, we want the children to be able to tell their story from their point of view. So I was like, okay, that's a good opening, and it can actually teach a student how to report scientifically, which is more important rather than just take a microphone and record anything. So yeah.
Okay, brilliant. Well, and if people want to connect with you and find out more about what you're both doing, what's the best way for them to do that if they're listening in?
I'm on Facebook and Instagram actively.
Okay.
Yeah, so my Instagram handle is Raina Min, RAINAMEEN.
Okay.
On Facebook, I'm Yasmin H. Amin.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah, yes.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing today. And how about you?
For me, it will be Instagram and Twitter. I believe my handle is Adnan Mahmood.
Okay.
So you can find me on Instagram or Twitter.
Wonderful. Thank you both.
No problem. Thank you very much.
I'm here with Cameron Mirza. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. And then we were just saying, so it was a year ago that we recorded a little podcast episode here. And now we're back, and it's gone very quickly.
The year's gone really, really fast, and but it's good to be back here, isn't it? I think
it is. Yeah, we were just saying there's lots of really interesting people here, and they've really doubled down on the content this time around. So that's great.
Yeah, it is. I think as we were talking earlier, this is now dubbed the Davos of education. And I think the content so far has been quite really strong, really good speakers. If you work in education and you don't leave here with some really good ideas to take back, then you shouldn't be here.
Yeah, get out, just get out of the classroom.
That's right.
And so, can you tell us a little bit about what you've been doing in the last year? Some people listening in will have seen all of your press releases and that kind of thing,
right,
but others may not have done.
When we met a year ago, we talked. I was quite intrigued by a session they ran on blockchain, and it made me think about how we can serve our students in a better way. So one of the challenges that students face, not just at where I work, but around the world, is that they're often there are barriers in the way of getting their credentials approved. So typically a student will want to go and travel abroad and do their master's or PhD, or they want to get a job. And many countries still operate in this kind of way of, look, we need to verify your certificates. We need to basically, get them stamped, that's not a very productive way to help students, because they're often waiting 3, 4, 5 weeks waiting for registration departments to verify the certificate. So the one thing I took away from last year, every year I try and take one practical thing away and think, right, I'm going to try and implement that. We became one of the first universities in the world to use blockchain technology to issue our certificates to students. So what does that mean? It means that, well, first of all, there's a lot of fraud when it comes to certificates in many parts of the world. So that cuts that out. And basically, in terms of like basic blockchain stuff, it's portable, it can't be tampered with, and you've got your verifications, your credentials for life, and you carry around with you. So for the listener, I'm just showing you what it looks like, Sophie, on my phone. So the students will have their wallet on their phones, smartphones. They will click on their University of Bahrain app, and that would come their certificates in 1, 2, 3 seconds. And so all the certificates are on there. So employers and universities can basically verify students' qualifications in 4 seconds. I think the broader picture for me is that you've got a lot of people who are, refugees from their countries. They often have to leave without their certificates. This cuts through all of that, and it gives people credentials that are lifelong, and they're able to transport with them wherever they go, despite their circumstances, which I think is really valuable in the kind of the world we live in today, where 5 million people have had to flee their own country. But also, I think in terms of strategic levels, as a country, we're able to now, in real time, understand the credentials of students graduating, not just their academic qualifications, but some of their professional certificates, some of their, other certificates they've picked up. And it's about building up portfolio, really, which are on the blockchain. And what we're able to do now is match that against employment data. So that's the real powerful thing from my perspective. Getting a real picture in real time of skills mismatches, and we're able then to use levers within education to kind of fix the imbalances that exist, turn the tap on, turn the tap off where necessary. So it puts us in a far better place in terms of calibrating skills, qualifications, and student history. So that's the real value from my perspective. And I think more and more universities will slowly use blockchain and education systems. I've just seen that Malta has become a blockchain country, and I think that's the way to go. I think, it's far greater than just verifying student credentials. It's about using that to give young people basically their portfolios for life.
When you mentioned sort of geolocating sort of skills data and sort of feeding that back into, whether it's developing university curriculums or flexing university curriculums if you know that perhaps a student demographic is sort of larger one year than the year previous and that kind of thing. Are you seeing more services pop up in that space? So I know, for example, there's a company here, I'll have to remember what they're called, but they do the similar thing to LinkedIn, where, basically they look at all of the adverts out there, what skill sets are being required in a certain geography, and then kind of try and triangulate that with providers as well.
Well, I mean, it's interesting you mentioned LinkedIn, because we've just engaged with LinkedIn to provide us that real-time data. So LinkedIn have got access to over 700 million professionals around the world, and what they're able to do is share with us real-time data in terms of jobs available, in terms of skills sought after, in terms of trends, and also, importantly, jobs in decline. That allows us, in terms of developing policy. I think the problem with education is that education should live and work in the future, because if you think about the timescale to develop, get approval for new programs, implement them, often you're talking 3, 4, 5 years, and that's way too late. So what we really need to be doing is actually looking at emerging job trends, emerging skill patterns, and start to act on that far quicker than we're currently doing. So I'll give you a good example is that next week we're launching our big data science program, and we're doing that in partnership with Liverpool John Moore University, and it's the first one in Bahrain and one of the few of its kind in the region. And the reason for that is really simple, that more and more jobs are going to rely on data, and people having a real deep understanding of how to use data to create value. So, rather than wait for that empirical evidence to come through, sometimes you've just got to say, look, the patterns are clear, and we need to take a bit of a risk, because the risk of doing nothing is far greater than actually not acting now. So we're using it in terms of policy development, in terms of new program development in particular, and underpinning that with skills.
Isn't it really interesting what you said about education needing to be in the future and about the kind of development times that are necessary? Because I've seen quite a lot of pushback around the idea of jobs of the future and, you know, these job titles coming in, etc. And people saying, well, actually, that's not that different. It's like a data analyst, but, you know, now it's called X.
Yeah.
But I think there is something quite useful in, you know, with the Oxford Dictionary, every year they add a couple of words. So, you know, I think this year they added woke and things like that because, you know, all these things that people tend to use on social media and influenced by the kind of communication on there. But there is a power in defining these things, and you know, if you use a certain term, it will speak to people that are familiar with that language, and kind of, you know, it does have an effect. So I think for universities, colleges, schools to have an understanding of what that language is, and to start to, you know, use it where it's useful and it speaks to industry and it speaks to young people, then yeah, there's something powerful in that. I think I don't think it's just about buzzwords. It is about defining the world we live in as well.
I think so, and I think we do hear a lot of buzzwords, absolutely, and I think that when we talk about jobs of the future, it's nuanced. Look, there's certain parts of the world that move faster than others. I think the context is key here, and we shouldn't overlook that. But there is no doubt, regardless of where we are in the world, that you know, still a lot of jobs will still be low and medium tech. I think that's certainly the case in emerging countries and developing countries. But the reality is that a lot of jobs that will be created will be based around ABCD, artificial intelligence, blockchain, cloud and data. And whether we like it or not, we have to respond to those challenges. I think definitely looking at what those jobs mean and the kind of skills that sit beneath it are really critical to higher education survive. Because higher education is coming under significant challenge now. Students are really looking at things and saying, do I really want to self-fund that and leave university with that debt, and what am I going to get out of it? And employers at the same time are responding saying, we haven't got enough skilled human capital coming through. Businesses are suffering as a result of that. So I think that the days of universities working in isolation are truly over, and the only way forward for tertiary education is for this kind of a hybrid model between employers and universities working far closer than ever before in terms of collaboration around curriculum, teaching and assessment.
For your students, where do a lot of those students end up? Is it locally? Is it internationally?
So I think typically in the region, the history has been for the oil-rich Gulf states that students would end up probably in a public sector job, but those days are over now. So the collapse in oil prices had a significant socio-economic impact, and the driver for the future now is private sector. So we've had to do a lot of work around information, advice and guidance to tell young people, actually, you know, your parents and your parents' parents may have worked in the public sector, but it's pretty sure, we're pretty sure that you're not going to. So it's about working on them far greater in terms of their mindset and their attitude, because definitely the private sector has a different mindset to the public sector, and key drivers are clearly, you know, profitability, and that means young people being far more critical thinkers, entrepreneurial in the workplace, and having a really strong work ethic. So I think, you know, we've had to work not just on the kind of curriculum side and obviously one of the other emerging trends for us is employers are looking far more for professional certificates. So we are, you know, Amazon, for example, has built a data center next to the campus, and they're very clear that getting Amazon certified students is a mandate for them. So we have to respond to that. And we see more and more of that happening now.
That's interesting. So that's basically doing like a bespoke course that certifies in the skills that Amazon recognises.
Yeah, absolutely. And in many ways, in terms of universities, we typically have been against that kind of professional certificate. But the reality is we have to respond accordingly, because more and more employers see professional certificate as bridging the gap between the world of employment and the universities. So the way we're framing that now is that students will graduate with a university degree, and as well as that, they'll have a portfolio of professional certificates that they've built up along the way. So when they graduate, they have a portfolio which is evidence-based, skills-based, as well as stuff that they've done in society and extracurricular stuff. So I think the days of just leaving university with a piece of paper saying I've graduated are over.
Really, really interesting. And I think when we chatted before, you were saying that there is a sort of burgeoning sector around, whether it's fintech or 3D printing where you are. So I'm guessing that all affects the uptake of courses at your university as well.
Yeah, sure. So Bahrain is establishing itself as a hub now. Well, it is a hub for fintech. So a year ago, Fintech Bay was established, and in the last 12 months, almost 40 international companies have set up in Fintech Bay. So it's become a real hotbed for startups in the fintech space. And that makes a lot of sense in terms of the transition to digital banking, in terms of the amount of young people using their smartphones for banking, and the amount of people in the region that typically are unbanked. So if you put the whole thing together, there's a real opportunity for fintech, and we're seeing that in Bahrain. But I think Bahrain is now really positioned itself to lead into the fourth industrial revolution and leapfrog. So I think that the skills we're focusing very much are things around artificial intelligence, blockchain and cloud and big data, and using that as a vehicle really to attract foreign direct investment to come to Bahrain. So the view for us is, look, if we build it, people will come, and we're starting to see that.
So you said that when you come here, you take one big idea away.
Yeah.
Do you know what that is yet, or are you still on the lookout?
Well, I mean, there's a couple of really interesting things today. The presentation on artificial intelligence was really interesting because I think that we overlook the local context to artificial intelligence, and I think also the building of local capacity to understand and really deploy artificial intelligence to really create value for students. But the session I've just had with OECD and the Minister of Education for Portugal, which is around the PISA scores, was fascinating because, we look at a lot of these tables, PISA, TIMSS, PEARLS, and obviously university rankings. But when it's all said and done, these are just there to inform institutions in terms of doing things. They are not a clearly defined ranking table or a clearly defined measurement of a country's success. And I think that we need to look beyond the kind of headlines and some of the detail, and I think that gets forgotten about. It's often about the journey a country's made, and it's also about creating equity within the education system as well, and giving life chances to all regardless of their socio-economic background. I think those important narratives often get overlooked when we just look at these headlines.
And quite ironically, like the OECD have always sort of said that's not what this is about. I think,
that's right,
and Andreas Psycho is always quite keen to point out, like, actually, there is. I mean, if you have like a 200 slide deck, which he's quite keen on, because it's like there are all these different facets of what that actually means when you break it down. But of course, like in the press, it's generally like these are the top 5, or
That's right.
That's kind of how these things go.
Absolutely, and I think we need to be a bit better in how we understand that information, because you're absolutely right. Countries are under pressure. They look at the headlines. Parents will look at headlines and see that their country has gone up or gone down. But what does that actually mean? What does that mean? It doesn't actually give us the detail of the strides that have been made in the last few years, or in fact, actually, education reform doesn't happen overnight. It is a process which takes years and years, and I think that we are living in a world that is very different to what it used to be. It's far more impatient, and we are driven by social media. Everything's about instant. Swipe left, swipe right. That's the world we live in, and actually, I think it's far more complex than that.
Absolutely. And if people want to find out, connect with you, find out what the next big thing is once you've finished here, how should they go about doing that?
So Twitter @cmirza1. That's probably the best way.
Thanks so much, Cameron.
Pleasure. Always great to see you.